Hello and welcome to my next OpenBVE video. In today's video we are taking the newly released Class 158 in Regional Railways Express livery on the Network West Midlands route from Maybank all the way to Wellingham Ludgate Hill. So let's get into the cab and get the train set up ready for departure. Don't need to reset the AWS at this point. Today's journey we will be running a semi-fast service, so we are stopping at Whitminster, Riverside, Kings Road, Frankley Junction, Radley Junction, Norton, Miller Street, Heath, Ruskin Park and Wellingham Ludgate Hill, with a journey time of around an hour and 20 minutes. So we currently have a double yellow signal. The starting speed here at Maybank is 30 miles an hour, and the signal has now just jumped up to green, and we currently have 52 miles to go until our final destination at Wellingham Ludgate Hill. And our next stop will be Whitminster. The line speed is going up to 70 once we join the line at the next point. It's going to shut off the power as we come up to 30 miles an hour. Accelerate up to 70. The train I am driving today is a 3-carriage Class 158 in the original Regional Railways Express livery. This is a reskin which I have recently completed and is available on the BVE4 Trains website. I will point out at the time of filming this video, the train has yet not been released, but at the time you will watch this video, the train will have been released. Now coming up on 70 miles an hour, you can see how we currently have a double yellow signal. So let's see if that jumps up to a green. So just let us coast back down towards 60 miles an hour. We are now coming up on Blackford Station. The signal is a double amber signal. I'm just going to not apply any more power at this point because we will shortly be needing to slow down for our stop at Whitminster Station. The entrance to the next tunnel, the line speed will be going down to 60, but as we are stopping at Whitminster Station, which is immediately after the next tunnel ends, I'm going to continue to slow us down in preparation for us to stop at Whitminster Station. I aim to enter the platform here at Whitminster at about 30 miles an hour, and I'm aiming to stop at the 3-car stop marker. As you can see, just coming up now on the left. We've arrived 17 seconds early. The signal ahead has now jumped up to a green, so I'm not going to put on the DRA. Departing from Whitminster, the starting speed here is 60 miles an hour. And we currently have just over 49 miles to go until our final stop at Wellingham Ludgate Hill. As I mentioned in the previous video, unfortunately one of the slight oddities with this route is unfortunately the next stop mile distanced display in the bottom corner doesn't actually tell you the next stop until your actual station as much. It will just tell you how far it is until the next station you're going to pass through, and then it will just stop at 0 and not necessarily go and tell you how far until your station, but it does tell you how far until your final destination. The line speed as we enter the tunnel is going to go up to 70 miles an hour, and as we had not yet reached 60, I did not shut off the power. Shortly coming up on the right hand side, the line will branch off towards Salford Bridge, and then will rejoin us again at Frankley Junction. The multiple warning is for an upcoming 40 mile an hour speed limit, which comes into force as we approach Riverside station. Now passing through Washpool station. So done a bit too much there. See the 40 mile an hour speed limit now coming into force. As we arrive at Riverside Station, I aim to be approaching the station at about 30 miles an hour and stopping at the 3-car stop board, which is before the canopy ends. See the 3-car stop sign coming up now. And we have arrived at Riverside, and I've put the DRA on because we have a single amber signal ahead of us. This particular model is of the original Regional Railways Express livery, as you can see. And one of the things I have also changed are the door open-close buttons that are on the sides. They look like the original buttons, not the newer round buttons that are normally on the 158s these days. See, our signal has now jumped up to a double amber signal. Turn off the DSD. The doors are now closing, and you can see that the interlock lights do go out. I'm going to turn off the DRA, and in this case we have just under 1.5 miles to go until our next stop, which is at King's Road. The starting speed here at Riverside is 40 miles an hour. The line speed is now going up to 75 miles an hour, though I doubt we will achieve 75 miles an hour between here and our next stop at King's Road. See, we now have a double yellow signal ahead of us, but we're going into platform 2 here at King's Road. I aim to approach the station at around 30 miles an hour once again, and stop at the 3-car stop board. This particular journey is set in the 2001 to 2005 set of routes, which means more of the trains will be in Silverlink livery, and all the station signs have Centro branding. And even though it is the oldest set of routes you can get for Network West Midlands, it is still probably too modern for a Regional Railways Express liveried Class 158. Stop about here. And we have arrived 25 seconds early. So I put on the DRA because we currently have a single yellow signal ahead of us. turn off the PSD. Signal has now cleared to green, so I'll turn off the DRA. The starting speed here at Kings Road is 90 miles an hour. And we now have 44.5 miles to go until our final stop at Wellingham Ludgate Hill. And our next station will be Frankley Junction. So I don't quite know what I did there, but I seem to adjust the camera in such a way that wasn't quite right. This is a neutral section, but it's not going to affect us because we are, of course, a diesel model unit. We are now just coming up on Clifton Greenbridge Station. At the end of Clifton Greenbridge, the line speed is going up to 90 miles an hour, up to 100 miles an hour, but our train is limited to 90, so we will not be exceeding that. I quite like to drive the Class 158 because I think the exterior model, which is not what I did, I just did the reskin, is quite a nice, well-detailed model. And it sounds alright, and it's quite nice to drive. The only thing that does disappoint me a bit is the cab view, which you can't see the whole cab from. As you can see, we have a double amber signal, so I'm going to reduce our speed down to 75 miles an hour. The particular service I'm driving today is 2W68, which is the 1722 Maybank to Wellingham Ludgate Hill. The rolling stock which should be used for today is a Class 170 Turbo Star, but I swapped it out for the Class 158 because I wanted to show off the new reskin. So you can see the signal is still double yellow. I'm not going to accelerate any more at the moment. As I see the next footbridge coming up, I will know that I'm fairly close to our next stop, which is at Frankley Junction. See the footbridge now. So I'm going to shut off power, and I will begin to slow down as we sort of get a bit closer to it. see, just come up here, you can see the line joining us from the right hand side, which is the line coming from Salford Bridge. Things that's quite nice about the route is all the animated road traffic you can see going over bridges. Just sort of a nice feature. And I'm just going to stop at the 3-car stop sign. You can see that the signal ahead is not showing a green aspect, so I put the DRA on. Got about 22 seconds to depart, and the signal has gone up to a green, so I'll turn off the DRA. Doors are now closing. You'll see the door interlock light go off. Just wait for the guard's buzzer. The starting speed here at Frankley Junction station is 100 miles an hour, but in our case we're limited to 90. When I say we're limited to 90, that's purely because in reality that is what these trains are limited to, but the actual train itself in the game is not physically limited to 90. You can go above 90, I believe. See, we've got quite a nice sunny day with just a few clouds in the sky and not very much rain, which is sort of quite nice. Acceleration at the moment is being a little impeded by the gradient we're climbing. And at the top of the hill, the line speed is going down to 90. We currently have a bit under 38 miles to go until Wellingham Ludgate Hill. The gradient has now levelled off and it will be soon beginning to go back down the hill. I don't know why I end up with spots of rain in the tunnel, but it just seems to be something that happens. Shut off the pack and let the gradient finish increasing our speed, and we are now coming up on Rockley Station. The next signal is a double amber signal, and that is because we have a red signal before we enter our next station at Radley Junction. Going to slow us down a bit more because you can see our next signal is a single yellow, and it's not much further on from the single yellow that we have a red signal. The other thing that's quite nice about this train is that the brakes are fairly effective. I don't know how representative of reality that is, but it's just a nice thing that makes it a bit easier to drive. Only downside along here is as you're slowing down for the red signal, you do then have a downward gradient, which does then make slowing down a little harder. See the red signal coming up now? And we are now cleared into platform 1 at Radley Junction. The speed for the junction and then the entire platform into Radley Junction is 30 miles an hour, so I'm not going to exceed 30 miles an hour at this point. See here there's the double track fast line that goes through the middle of the station, which some of the services that don't stop here will go through there at speed. So we have a red signal currently at the end of the platform. Now see the 3-car stop board coming up at the end of the canopy. Put our DRA on because we have a red signal and we have arrived 4 seconds early. While I stopped here, I'll just go down the train so you can see the livery in more detail. We now have a green signal and there's an M because we're going down the main line as opposed to branching off to the right along a line that is not modelled. The starting speed here is 30 miles an hour, but just about as we cross over the points at the end of the platform, the line speed is going down to 25 miles an hour, so I'm not going to exceed 25 miles an hour at this stage. You can now see, just after we cross over the points going off to the right hand side, the 90 board, allowing us to go back up to 90. We should be able to accelerate up to 90, just as we start having the track joining us from the right hand side. with a stutter there, not quite sure what's going on. When I was talking to Steve, the owner of BV4Train's website, about this release of train, he was saying that one of the things that meant that the cab view of this train would be inaccurate for a regional railways livery of train would be the fact that the cab has TPWS fitted, and for the release of this train I have made sure the TPWS will be removed from the cab. Just to help with the realism of the train. But it was something that I had not thought of when I was making the train. Because I'd forgotten that TPWS is a system that has only been available on trains since about 2000, after it was deemed that ATP, which was fitted on the Great Western Main Line and the Chiltern Main Line, was too expensive to fit all over the country, is what I believe is the reason why we have TPWS. As a cheaper alternative, but providing some of the same benefits that ATP provides. The line speed is now up at 125, but because we are limited to 90, I'm not exceeding 90. This particular route is fitted with TPWS, and near the beginning when I was driving this route I was caught out by the TPWS several times, but I've now learnt to avoid it and make sure that I don't get caught out by it. See there was a double amber flashing signal, which is because we have a diverging route aspect, and that is because we are going to be joining the slow lines before we pass through Nuthurst station. The speed limit for those junctions is 50 miles an hour, so we will be slowing down to 50, but the warning gives us enough time to slow down from 125 before we reach the 50 speed restriction, so we don't need to slow down quite so quickly. So you now have a single yellow that is flashing. The junction is just after we cross over the neutral section, just up ahead here. See now there is a single yellow aspect with a left-hand feather indicator being lit up. Just finish off slowing down to 50 miles an hour. You can see as we approach it, the signal has now jumped up to green, which means once we pass the junction I will be able to accelerate back up to 9 speed. So here's the junction. And shortly after the line diverges to the right, you can see the 100 mile an hour speed board coming up, which is the limit for the slow line. Which is one of the things I find a bit disappointing about the route, because at Norton there is no ability for you to cross from the fast lines across to the line that goes down to Wellingham Ludgate Hill. You have to be on the slow lines to go to Wellingham Ludgate Hill, which means if you're coming on one of the fast services down from Maybank in a Voyager, you're then limited to 100 all the way to Norton, even though you could go up to 125, which I just think is something that's a bit annoying, but you just have to live with. But in our case it doesn't affect us because we're limited to 90. 27.5 miles to go until our final stop at Wellingham Ludgate Hill. See platforms now appearing for Nuthurst Station. Which your class 323 is going to get in the way of that shot there. It looks like we've got a double amber signal coming up now, so I'll shut off power. And as it has not cleared, I will now slow it down to around 75 miles an hour. See, the signal ahead of us is a double amber signal, so no need for us to slow down any further than we already have. Let's just keep... Oh, it jumped up to green just as we went under. So I'll speed back up, sort of nearer line speed, and hope that our next signal is not a double yellow. Speed restriction is a speed restriction down to 80. There's no warning for the 80 mile an hour speed restriction, but I would say start slowing down as soon as you see the morph board for the fast line for the upcoming 60 mile an hour speed restriction. And as we are only travelling at 90, although we'll probably be travelling slower, that will give us plenty of time to slow down the 10 miles an hour. If you're travelling at 100, you need to slow down a bit earlier. But I can't remember exactly where it is best to slow down. I'm just going to let us coast back down towards 75, as it was still a double yellow signal. And it is a double yellow signal as well, and you can now see on the right hand side the morph board for the upcoming 60, and it is at this signal the line speed goes down to 80, which means I will slow down more because it's still a double yellow signal, so I'll slow down to about 67, 65 sort of speed. You can now see ahead we have a single yellow signal, so I will slow us down further. This is a morph board warning for the upcoming 40 mile an hour speed limit. Be warned, the 40 mile an hour speed limit comes into force at the same time as the 25 mile an hour speed restriction if you are going into platforms 1 or 2, whereas if you're going into platform 3, the 40 mile an hour speed limit is fine. As you can see, we now have a red signal, which is probably going to clear as we get close to it, and it will then clear us into the platforms at Norton Station. Signal has now cleared, and it is clearing us into platform 2, which means the line speed will go down to 25 instead of 40 at the same place. One of the slightly odd things is that instead of the tracks becoming slightly further apart, the line to the right of us, I don't know whether that's the up or the down line, joins our line and goes into effectively the platform for that line, while we will then diverge across. You can sort of see it coming up now, whereas the fast lines just get to carry on in a straight line. So here's the 25 mile an hour to the left, or 40 if you're going straight on. So always be warned and know which platform you're going into based on that signal. The line speed does go back up to 40 just after we cross over all the point work. To our left was Norton Depot, where you can start many different rail services. Really short ones just go to Hammerwich, as well as others that will go on slow stopping services down to Wellingham Ludgate Hill, or even ECS services. You can see on our left there in platform 1 is a 4-carriage Class 158 in the Regional Railways livery. It was because they were in Network West Midlands that made me think, ooh, I'd quite like to make one. And in fact, some of the graphics are based off the side panels of that, but are in my model, are a much higher resolution. Whereas because there are route object files, they are a bit more low resolution. We have now arrived at Norton, and we are 4 seconds late. So I put on the DRA, and you can see there the two 158s sitting side by side, which is quite nice. Didn't mean to hit the horn. Yeah, I'm using a different keyboard to normal, so I'm just having to remember where some of the key locations are. Signal has now cleared to a green, so I turned off the DRA and we're now ready to depart. The line speed here, starting line speed is 40 miles an hour, whereas if you were on platform 3, it would be a starting speed of 40, but it would be going down to 25 very quickly because you'll be going over some point works to join the other line. So having departed Norton, our next station will be Miller Street. The line speed has now gone up to 60. But you can see ahead we have a double amber signal, so I won't necessarily accelerate all the way up to 60, so we'll probably cut off at about 50. You can see we do still have a double yellow, but it had just jumped up from a single yellow. So I'll stay at about 50 and wait and see if the signalling changes up more. The line speed is now going up to 70, but I'll stay at 50 miles an hour for the time being. So there's a signal repeater there, which is for the signal that's just around here, which is showing a single yellow. So I'll say a little bit more. The next signal is at the end of the platform here at Brookfield Station. But I think I can see that the signal is showing a single yellow. Yes, it is. So we don't have to stop at this point. I'm not going to speed up. Must be stuck behind a slow train. I'll hope that it's terminating at Hobbs Cross, and then we'll be able to pick back up speed. To our left now, we are passing Brookfield Yard, where you can end up ending many freight services that come from Salford Bridge or Maybank, or you can end up starting a number of freight services and head down to Wellingham Ludgate Hill, or I believe it's King's Road sidings. You can see the signal ahead is showing a single yellow, so we don't need to stop yet. I'll stay at around 40 miles an hour. Bit of a shame, really. It'd be nice to come along here at 70. It's the fastest speed we'll get for a while. Signal has now jumped up to a double amber, so I will now accelerate up to around 55 miles an hour. The signal ahead is showing a single yellow aspect. Just slow down a bit more then. Something you can find when you drive this route is you can end up with a lot of variation in trains in front of you to causing delays on you. This is a more visible warning for the upcoming 40 mile an hour speed limit, which is for the junctions at Hobbs Cross Station. You can see we now have a single yellow signal. This means we're currently not able to enter Hobbs Cross Station. If you are driving the 2006 to 2010 or the 2011 to 2015 version of Network West Midlands, you will find that multi-port is for an upcoming 50 mile an hour speed restriction, because the track layout at Hobbs Cross Station has been changed to allow for a higher line speed for trains passing through Hobbs Cross Station and onto Miller Street. Just keeping us slow at the moment, hoping that the signal has changed. I can't quite tell, I think it probably has, but you can see here that the line speed is now going down to 40 miles an hour. But if you are driving it more recently, that would be 50. The line speed has now jumped up to green, so I will now accelerate up to 40. And you can see there are two Class 323s sitting in the platforms there on the right hand side. If you're driving an electric train, you can only access platforms 3 and 4. It's diesel only from this point onwards. And the line speed after we cross over the junctions and we enter the platform goes up to 60. Line speed is signal is showing a single yellow, which is interesting, seeing as our previous signal was showing a green. Not quite sure why that's the case. At this point, I'm not going to accelerate up to 60, in case our next signal is a red signal. It is showing a... not quite sure yet. a yellow aspect. So I will now accelerate up to around sort of 46-ish. See, now we are on the non-electrified lines. When you read the description for the route, it says that this particular area between sort of Hobbs Cross and Wellingham Ludgate Hill is quite heavily based off the Snow Hill lines in Birmingham. You can see we're coming up on a signal repeater, but it is showing that the next signal is not showing a red aspect, so I'm not going to slow down anymore. Yes, as you will notice at, for example, Miller Street, I personally think it looks sort of similar to Stourbridge Junction, with the fact that it also has a single track branch line branching off, and then there's a small yard at one end. It sort of feels similar. Signal, you may have noticed, jumped up to a double amber, but we do now have a morpeth board warning for the upcoming 30-mile-an-hour speed restriction, which comes into force just as we enter the platforms at Miller Street Station, which is our next station. I'm just going to keep the power off at this point, and you can now see the platforms appearing, and I think you can see the speed board now, so I'll just sort of begin to slow down. And you can see at the end of the platform is a single yellow signal, which will always be a single yellow because the following signal will always be red because it is guarding a junction which you will be diverging off. And you can see on the left hand side is a X Regional Railways Class 153, which is probably operating the shuttle from Miller Street to, I believe the station's called Pensford, but it is not modelled, as far as I know, in Network West Midlands. And you can see the branch line branching off to the left hand side there. We have a single yellow, so I put the DRA on. Unfortunately, we seem to have arrived a minute late, which is because we've had so many. We haven't had any green signals all the way from Norton, effectively. You can even see, if you look carefully, you can see the red signal at the end of this stretch of track, which is why this one is a yellow signal. The starting speed here at Miller Street is 30, though we do have a red signal, and you will always have a red signal that you will see from the end of the platform here. And at that red signal, the line speed is going down to 25 miles an hour. At this point, we now have just over 14 miles to go until our final destination at Wellingham Ludgate Hill, and our next station is Heath. We'll just shut off the power at this point, waiting for the signal to clear. Signal has now cleared to green. I will accelerate back up to 25 miles an hour, which is the maximum speed for the junction, which we are turning right on. the line speed as we go around the corner has now gone up to 60, which is the highest speed we will be reaching until we pass through Bromford Albion. This particular bit of the route I find quite nice. It's quite a scenic section of route, but has unfortunately not the highest line speed, which does make it a bit slow. But at least we do now have green signals, so we should be able to travel at the line speed. We're now coming up on Ludley Station. Unlike the other section of non-electrified line, which is the bit between Whitminster, Salford and Frankley Junction via Salford Bridge, this bit is a lot slower, and the stations are far more frequent. This section, most of this is 60, but there are many bits of much lower speeds, whereas the section via Salford Bridge gets up to 90 after you've gone through Salford Bridge, but 75 before then. And the stations, they can be up to about 4 miles apart, whereas here, sort of almost less than 2 miles in most cases, but normally not much more than a mile. Wait for the tree to get out of the way. The Morpeth board that we were just passing there is for an upcoming 30-mile-an-hour speed restriction, which is comes into force just as we're passing through Quarry Bank Station. You can see the board come up now. It's because the corner's quite tight. So here's the 30-mile-an-hour speed restriction. This is what I mean, this section's a lot slower, because you do have a number of bits like this. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a downhill, so you've got to make sure you don't go and overspeed along here. Now coming up on Quarry Bank Station. After Quarry Bank Station, just after the level crossing, the line speed is going back up to 60, and we will be climbing the steepest incline on the route, which I believe is a 1 in 45 gradient. So there's the level crossing. And then the 60-mile-an-hour board, so I now accelerate back up to 60. And as you can see, this is becoming quite a steep gradient, which does impede our acceleration. There we are now at the 1 in 45. Oh no, it's a 1 in 40, which is only very slightly less steep than the steepest gradient in the UK, which is between Bromsgrove and Barnt Green, which I believe is a 1 in 38, I believe. We're now coming up on Haddon Hill station. We've managed to pick up some speed as we climb that hill. Gradient levels off a bit through Haddon Hill station, but straight after Haddon Hill it becomes steep again and gets to a 1 in 45. It's not quite as steep as before. We are now coming up on 60 miles an hour. Most passenger trains can make it up here all right. It's that you do notice it a bit more when you are in one of the 150 sprinters and you've stopped at Quarry Bank. You'll end up having more issues. Though what can be a lot harder is when you're driving a freight train up here. And I think once I was coming through the station, this tunnel, and I ended up stalling. And the game crashed because of some weird glitch that I never managed to diagnose. Not quite sure why we're getting rain in the tunnel again. At the top of the hill, we will be shortly passing through White Heath station, which is our next stop, I believe. Yes, here is White Heath station. And the steep gradient there has helped us slow down a bit. You can see on the right hand side in the platform is a Class 168 clubman operating Chiltern service. Just going to stop at the 3-car stop board, which is alongside a 4-car stop board. And we're now 40 seconds late, so we've managed to pick up time since our stop at Miller Street. I put the DRA on because I could see in the distance a yellow signal, though it has now changed to a green, so I'll turn back off the DRA. The starting speed departing here from White Heath is 60 miles an hour. You may have noticed that the weather has just changed. It is now dark clouds. Yeah, I don't quite know what happened. Just as I was replying to the guard's buzzer at White Heath, the game just crashed and closed. So I ended that recording and I've started a new recording at White Heath, and you've just seen it switch between the two of them, and that's because I'm just hoping to carry on the journey. But unfortunately, one of the things that's really brilliant about this route that I do love is the fact that you get varying changeable weather, which every time you load the game you can get different weather patterns, which is quite nice. So unfortunately, when I reloaded it, I got a different weather to what I had got. But instead of reloading it again and keeping on trying until I got a weather pattern that was what I wanted, I decided to just carry on with the dark grey clouds. It does also mean that we are now back on time, whereas we were we were late, but we were picking back up time. Having left White Heath, we now have 7 miles to go until our next stop at 7 miles to go until our final stop at Wellingham Ludgate Hill. Here the line speed is going down to 50, which is while we pass through Longley, and our next stop will be Ruskin Park. At the end of the platforms here at Ruskin Park, the line speed is going back up to 60. Though if you are a freight train, be warned, the line speed actually goes down to 40 here. You should now be able to accelerate back up to 60 miles an hour. We are now back up at 60. Just around this corner we will have a morph board for the upcoming 30-mile-an-hour speed restriction, which is just before we enter our next station, which is Ruskin Park. It's because there's a sharp corner that we have to cross, and the speed limit comes into force just after you can see the third overbridge just coming up now. So I'm just going to slow us down to 30. You can now see the 30-mile-an-hour speed restriction coming up now. And our next station is just around this corner. Personally, I think some of the station has some resemblance to, I believe it's Smethwick Galton Bridge, because of the fact that it's got this sort of overbridge, which if you do go and look at pictures of Smethwick Galton Bridge, you will see that it has this same overbridge, which I quite like. And actually, if you look on some of the route plans for this route, you can see that this particular bit is where we are crossing over another railway, which is exactly the same as what happens at Smethwick Galton Bridge. But if you do go up, you will see that there's nothing around. There is a river, which is moving, which is quite nice to see. The starting speed here at Ruskin Park is 30 miles an hour, though just after we leave the platforms here, the line speed is going to go up to 50. As you can see, we are leaving on a double yellow signal. And you can see just after the arched overbridge, there's a single yellow signal, which means at the end of the platforms here at Bromford Albion, which you can now see the towers of the lifts for the overbridge, there will be a red signal. And what this will probably mean is we're being put onto the fast lines here, where the line is going to quad out, which is a little annoying because I'd rather just be able to accelerate up to 90 here. But we will get up to 90 after we cross over the crossovers, which have a restriction of 40 miles an hour. You can now see the red signal coming up. The signal has now cleared to green, and as you can see, we are crossing over to the fast lines. Once we have crossed over, the line speed will be going up to 90. See that the speed limit has now gone down to 40. And here is the 90 speed board. We should now be able to accelerate up to 90. This particular bit of the route is a bit of the route that I think I really like, and it's because I quite like the full track bit. And a bit further on, you'll see all the flyovers we have flying over us, and I just find that quite cool to see. Just it's a bit of variety, makes the route a bit more interesting, and I quite like speeding along at 90 under a load of flyovers. On the left here, you can see we have Kings Road sidings, which is one of the places you can end up stopping freight trains. We won't be able to see the train because there's a Class 66 hauling metal going past, I think. We now have 3 1/3 miles to go until our final stop, and our next stop, which is Wellingham Ludgate Hill. That's the other bit. There's a bit more about this section. It's nice. I prefer this section of quad track to the other bit of quad track we had around Nuthurst, because it's more varied. The scenery is a bit more interesting, but this section's even shorter than that bit, and you end up having to slow down. You start to see the roads appearing, and there's a canal as well. It's all very interesting. We are coming up on 90 miles an hour. You can now see we have a double amber signal coming up, and a multiple warning for the upcoming 40 mile an hour speed restriction. Just mean we have now got to start slowing down, so I'll start to slow down to around 65, and here you can see the flyovers. I just really like that. I just like the section in general. Here you can see some more crossovers, and the 40 mile an hour speed restriction comes into force at the same time on both the fast and the slow lines, and it's at the entrance to the next station, which is Hocknell. Though because we're on the fast lines, we do not actually go through the platforms of Hocknell station. They are only on the slow lines. Now down at 40, there is a single yellow signal, which is as we enter this upcoming tunnel. Be very warned, the corresponding red signal, which is making sure we don't enter Wellingham Ludgate Hill until we're allowed to, is very close, and you can see it appearing now, so I'd recommend travelling more slowly than 40 along this section. And at the end of just after the red signal, the line speed will be going down to 25. So here the red signal just coming up. And there's quite a steep gradient coming up out of these tunnels, which does help to slow you down for these red signals. We are now cleared into platform 2, and you can see here the speed limit is going down to 25 miles an hour. And just after the 25 mile an hour speed restriction, there's a board telling us that AWS is not fitted in this area. And that's purely because of how close the signals are and how complicated the junctions are. So it just makes sure that it's a bit simpler and easier, so drivers aren't having to keep pushing the AWS key, the AWS reset button, while they're also trying to manage their speed and make sure they stop in the right place here at Wellingham Ludgate Hill. As you can see here, we are sort of entering a sort of city area, and from reading the documentation about this route, this station is based off Birmingham Snow Hill, but it is based off Birmingham Snow Hill before the old station roof was removed, which I've not seen. I don't remember what Birmingham Snow Hill station roof looks like now, but apparently it's not as nice as it used to look like, and this is based off what it used to look like. See here we have a red signal at the end of the platform, and that is where we should be stopping. Wellingham Ludgate Hill is currently the furthest you can travel on the route, though I do believe there are proposals that the people who have made this route do want to extend it on further, and if you end up just going on the free roam camera down the tunnel at the end, you will find platforms at the end, which I believe are the start of what could become quite like Birmingham Moor Street Station. And here we are stopping at Wellingham Ludgate Hill. I'll put the DRA up because we have a red light, and I'll put the train into neutral, and I will, because I've had to start the train again, I'll turn on the tail lights and turn off the marker and headlights. And I'll turn off the engine with the 3 key. And this is us at Wellingham Ludgate Hill. Please go to the BVE4 Trains website if you would like to download the new Regional Railways Class 158 Reskin, and also go to BVE4 Trains for the Network West Midlands route, which I thoroughly recommend because I think it is brilliant. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. I certainly have enjoyed this run. If you would like to see more content, please do subscribe. I have plenty more videos that I'm hoping to make over the next coming weeks and months, and if you have any suggestions of routes or trains you'd like me to drive next, do leave them in comments down below. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.